Okay, go ahead and start that now then. Thank you. Okay, cool. So to start off with, if I could just get some preliminaries, you could tell me what your position is here, how long you've been at Purdue, and who you advise and how long you've been their advisor slash advisors.
Okay, yeah, my name is Tasha DeWitt, and I'm a clinical assistant professor in the School of Nursing. And I've been here for, I think this is my sixth year. It's hard to believe that it's been that long, but I have been advising Purdue Student Nurses Association pretty much the entire time I've been here. It was the spring semester of the first year I was here. So almost 6 years as well for them.
Okay. If you could talk about how that started, was that part of your job description, or was that did they approach you, or was that something the school of nursing had initiated?
It was really great. The previous advisor, that would they have two advisors. So, one of them was stepping down because she was going to be leaving the university. And so these students just reached out to the whole entire School of Nursing faculty and basically had this interview process that I had to go through. So I had to fill out like an application where they asked like my interest, how many hours could I like contribute to the club itself. And then after I filled that out, I got to meet with the executive board and they just kind of interviewed me a little bit, asking me just a little bit more in-depth questions. And so after that process was done, they just reached out and they were like, we would love to have you a part of our organization. And so then I was brought on with the current advisor, and there was a little bit of like an orientation process that they helped me with.
Okay. So that was almost like a job interview in itself.
Yes,
Sounds like
yes, it was.
interesting. Um, had have you been in higher education 6 years, or had you worked at a different institution prior?
I was just a nurse, like a floor nurse, for about 3 years before I decided to go into education.
Okay. So this is your first experience advising the student work with the
Yes.
Purdue Student Nurses Association. Okay. And what, I guess, motivated or compelled you to go ahead and I'm going to give this a try and see if they'd like me as an advisor?
I was really interested in that outside student engagement. I really wanted the contact with students on a smaller scale because I do lecture to anywhere from like 160 to 180 students. And so I don't get that smaller group setting as much. And that's really why I wanted to become an educator. It was to have those interactions. And so I was looking for a way to be more engaged with the students. And so when that popped up, I was like, well, I guess I'll give this a try, see if I like it. And I've loved it. So
How big is the group?
the Purdue Student Nurses Association,
Yeah.
um, we have our exec board, which consists of like six or so students. But then the members as a whole, we always start out at the beginning of the year with like 100 students, but then regular attendees, I would say between 20 and 30.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned being able to engage with students on a smaller scale and have that more closer, more direct contact, but what else do you enjoy about your role as student org advisor?
I really enjoy helping them come up with innovative things for their meetings and like other things that we can provide for the School of Nursing as a whole. And so for meetings, they used to just have like a guest speaker for every meeting, but that kind of got a little bit boring. We saw students like start to drop off and not attend the meetings as much anymore. And so I started thinking of ways that we could up our attendance. And so doing things like since we are nursing based, having like skills days where like one of our meetings, everyone comes and they just like learn how to put in an IV. I've also encouraged them to reach out to other organizations in the School of Nursing. So we have like diversity in nursing, men in nursing, and do collaborative things with them. So like hosting a blood drive and things like that. That way, it teaches them how to like collaborate with other groups instead of just being siloed and by themselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say, anytime organizations, along with their advisors, can reach out, branch, network, collaborate, you learn a lot of networking there, and then they're making connections,
Mhm.
their time in college, and innovation can kind of spawn from there. Like, oh, these organizations doing this and this, maybe we should do something like that ourselves. So
Yes.
that's pretty fantastic. All right, I'm gonna get into a little more challenging questions. Uh,
Okay.
what would you say you find most challenging about your role as an advisor?
What I find most challenging would be having the answers to every question that they might ask,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to the account details. So, especially when we're trying to work. So we've been doing I used to call them skip-a meals when I was here at the university where they like partner with a restaurant. I don't know
Yeah,
if they're still called that.
yeah, they're still called that. That was new to me, actually. I hadn't heard that in my previous institution. Came here. There's a big thing here. So yeah, there's
Yeah. That's like the number one way that they like to fundraise. And so I have no idea or had no idea how to go about connecting with the restaurant. The restaurants, especially Chipotle, they have to write a check for the money that the club gets from the fundraiser. But, it has to be written to the university. So then how does that money get to us specifically? And it's mostly the money situation. Everything else I've been able to like help them with. It's just those fine details that I'm not familiar with.
gotcha. Yeah, not an economics major. You're a
No.
nursing professional.
Yes.
Fair enough. In your 6 years as advisor for Purdue Student Nurses Association, is there a moment or a period that you point to as like your proudest?
Yes. So, and I don't know if it's specifically me, but kind of proud of our club in general. We did start this annual skills fair for the entire School of Nursing. There's roughly probably like 600 students. And so we thought that it would be a great idea to come up with a way for them to practice their skills outside of the classroom. And
Mhm.
so we have a 1 day, it's in the fall semester, not on a football weekend. It's on a Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah, that we have like a keynote speaker come and then they branch off and do different stations that are different skills and they rotate through those stations. And then usually at the end of the conference, they all come back together and they get some sort of certification, whether that be like Narcan training or there's this thing called Stop the Bleed, where they're
Mhm.
like trauma certified. And so we've been able to get enough faculty, which that's a key to getting faculty to help.
Sure.
Um, but we've been able to have this conference for 2 years now and provide that extra training to the entire School of Nursing. And so I'm really proud of the work that the students have put into that,
Mhm.
and to make that successful because it's not easy. Usually it's a lot of work over the summer since it's in the fall semester. I'm helping them like order supplies and get everything organized and reach out to the speakers. So I think that's the proudest like moment that I've had is creating that conference.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome initiative. So now being the spring, do you and your organization have any plans for next academic year? Anything you're going to change or add to that conference?
Yes, we are looking at more specialized skills because I know a lot of students want to go into like the ER or labor and delivery or pediatrics. So we've already sent out a ton of Qualtrics surveys to faculty and students asking how we can make that conference a little bit better or more beneficial, interesting for them. And so we've gotten a lot of response. They do want a lot more trauma care. So we're going to try this year to reach out to more specialized people. So targeting our faculty that have experience in those areas, but then also like our local like paramedics, local respiratory therapists, Purdue Fire does a lot of like kind of trauma care. So we're going to start reaching out to them to see if more of that collaboration piece, can we get more people involved than just our faculty ourselves? So
That's awesome. And it's really nice to hear that advisor um, kind of motivating the interest in getting feedback for things that the organizations do. I think a lot of times they get in a rut because they're kind of going off of assumptions and, well, it seems like, well, this is what we want to do. Um,
right.
yeah, but really having that mindset of like, we're here to serve a community. Let's get feedback from that community and make this thing even better. That's awesome. So, as I mentioned earlier, before we started recording, one reason I want to do this is to get an understanding of how advisors themselves would like to be supported or resources they would like to see or have available. So that's my next question for you. What do you feel the university could do or do more to support you and to support your organization and maybe just advisors or student organizations in general?
I think the biggest thing that could kind of help is knowing who to contact. I think that's the biggest issue. Like, if we do have a question, who can I specifically reach out to get that question answered? Which I think the process might have changed from 6 years ago because when I became the advisor of PSNA, I didn't receive anything from the university. But I did just become the advisor like 3 weeks ago for Delta Gamma too. So I haven't done anything with them yet. But and I received an email that had information, links to click. And so I think that's better. I haven't been able to look into that. But if we knew like who to go to for the financial aspect of the clubs, and if that was just like an email that was automatically sent out to us when we became an advisor, that would be great. Because I know I can look on Purdue's website and probably find those answers, but that takes time. And so if there was like an automated email that could really help us, like if you have questions financially, if you have issues with your club, contact this person. That would be helpful.
Yeah, that's very understandable. I get emails and phone calls pretty consistently, both from advisors and student orgs. We're trying to do this, and I'm like, yeah, that's over there. That's over here.
Yep.
That's there, and I'm in the midst of it, so like I know where all these things are. But I can see how organizations wouldn't want to be like, you got to go to Brian to find that. They'd rather have that on hand. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. My last question for you is in your 6 years of experience as a student organization advisor, what advice or insights, tips would you have for someone new to the role? Maybe this is their first time, their first year, or someone interested, but they're not quite sure what they're getting into.
I would say some of the advice and things that I had to overcome as a new advisor would be it's okay to not know the answer. I thought because I was the advisor, I just have to know everything. And just knowing that it's okay to say, like, I don't know that answer, but I will find it and I will get back to you. I think that's really powerful. And the students then see you as human, like you don't know all the answers. So knowing that that's okay and you're not expected to know everything. Um, and then I think also being willing to step in when there is an issue with the like especially the executive board members. So I thought my position was just to give advice if needed. Sometimes the students are not going to ask for it. So sometimes you just have to step in if you see something going awry. So like we had an issue with our president not being very involved with our organization. And so knowing when to step in, knowing to look at your bylaws. If you don't know something, always go back to your bylaws. And then intervening at the right time. Don't let things go on forever. Like, don't let them persist. Step in
Mm,
right away. And if they're thinking about getting into the role, but they're unsure, I always, if you step into it and you don't, it's not for you, you do have the option to leave if you want to. But I find it's a great way to connect with students, get to know a little bit about more about them and create those connections. And I've not regretted going into it. The time commitment is kind of what you want to make it. There are some rules like you have to meet with the exec board so often.
yeah,
But really, like if you want to be more involved, the students love it and they love that connection as well. So you can make it as involved as you want. So I think that's the biggest thing was the time commitment too. But it can be what you want it to be.
yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you. I mean, given you've been with this same organization for 6 years, it does seem like something that's intrinsically motivating or fulfilling to you, which is
Mhm.
great. I'm sure the students are getting a lot out of having an advisor like that. So
Yes.
that was my last question, Tasha. Thank you again for the
Mhm.
time. Just to double check, you're okay with me? What I'll probably be posting one a month because I only send out the bulletin once a month. So with the SAO advisor, oh, I'll go ahead and stop the recording because that's the